Jerusalem, the world's most contested city, a land where history, faith, and blood have collided for thousands of years. 306 AD, everything began to shift. Killed Jesus, blaming them for Jesus' death. The magnificent Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque were constructed by Muslims, Jews, and Christians of modern Zionism. Hamas emerged in Gaza. On August 7th, Israel's security cabinet made famine. This story begins nearly 3,000 years ago, around 1000 BCE, when Prophet David made Jerusalem the capital of his kingdom. Later, his son, Prophet Solomon, built a grand sacred sanctuary there, what we now know as the Temple Mount, or Haram al-Sharif. From the Islamic perspective, David and Solomon were prophets of Allah. In 586 BCE, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar captured Jerusalem and destroyed the first temple. Many Jews were taken captive and exiled to Babylon. Then in 541 BCE, the Persian Emperor Cyrus the Great, or Cyrus, conquered Babylon and allowed the Jews to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their sanctuary. It was during this time that the second sanctuary was constructed. A few centuries later, in 70 CE, the Roman general Titus captured Jerusalem and destroyed the second sanctuary. From the ruins, only one wall remains standing, what is now known as the Western Wall, or the Wailing Wall. This site is extremely sacred to the Jewish people. What you're seeing on the screen is the Dome of the Rock. This here is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and this is the Western Wall. The entire area shown is called the Temple Mount by Jews, and Muslims refer to it as Haram al-Sharif. Non-Muslims are not allowed to enter the Al-Aqsa Mosque, while Jews pray at the Western Wall. Just about 2 kilometers from this area is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Because of these wars and persecutions, the Jews gradually spread across Europe and many other regions. And it was from this Jewish lineage that Jesus, or Prophet Isa, was born, a great prophet and messenger to Muslims, and the Son of God to Christians. Jesus, or Isa, grew up during the reign of the Roman Empire. He taught people to worship one Creator and to follow justice and righteousness. He often opposed the strict and incorrect interpretations of the Jewish religious leaders of that time. This created deep conflict between them. According to Christian belief, the conflict became so intense that some Jewish leaders in Jerusalem brought accusations against Jesus to the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate. In the end, Pilate handed down a verdict, and Roman soldiers crucified and killed Jesus, an event that would change the course of history forever. But Islamic belief tells a very different story. The Quran clearly states that Jesus, or Isa, was never crucified. Instead, Allah raised him up alive to the heavens. Those who believed they saw him crucified were in fact witnessing an illusion. It only appeared so to them. At the time, Christians were a small and powerless group, living on the margins of society. Then, in 306 AD, everything began to shift. Constantine the Great rose to power as the Roman emperor. History remembers him as the first emperor to officially support Christianity. Under his rule, the new faith spread like wildfire, eventually becoming the dominant religion of the empire. It was during Constantine's reign that the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, a sacred landmark of Christianity, was built in Jerusalem. In the following centuries, negative sentiment toward the Jewish people began to spread across the Roman Empire. Many started blaming them for Jesus' death. Jewish communities across Europe began facing increasing restrictions and persecution. In 637 AD, after the fall of the Byzantine Empire, Muslim forces peacefully took control of Jerusalem. Umar ibn al-Khattab arrived and set a remarkable example of religious tolerance, showing deep respect toward the diverse communities living there. In the sacred Temple Mount area of Jerusalem, the magnificent Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque were constructed, both revered as the third holiest sites in Islam. It is from this very place that the Prophet Muhammad made his extraordinary night journey and ascended to the heavens during Isra and Mi'raj, an event beautifully described in the Quran. This sacred ground holds immense spiritual significance for Muslims, just as it does for Jews, for whom the Temple Mount was the site of their most ancient and holiest sanctuary, the Second Temple. Jerusalem is equally vital to Christians, as it is the historic backdrop for the birth, life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. Thus, Jerusalem stands as a powerful symbol of historical, religious, and cultural importance, cherished deeply by Muslims, Jews, and Christians alike. When the Roman Empire took over Jerusalem, many Jews were scattered across the world. A significant number of them eventually settled in Europe, but they never let go of their deep connection to their ancient homeland, Jerusalem. From ancient times, no matter where they lived, Jews would always turn toward Jerusalem when they prayed. In the late 19th century, when Palestine was under the rule of the Ottoman Empire and Arab Muslims formed the majority population, many Jews living in Europe began to dream of returning to their historic land. In 1882, a Jewish thinker named Leon Pinsker published his influential essay Auto-Emancipation. In it, he argued that no matter how many legal rights Jews were granted in Europe, they would never be fully accepted as equal citizens. He believed that the Jewish people needed to take their future into their own hands, and that required a state of their own. This line of thinking planted the seed of modern Zionism. In the years that followed, the movement became more organized, and in 1897, under the leadership of Theodor Herzl, the first Zionist Congress was held, formally giving shape to political Zionism. Its core aimed to establish a safe, independent homeland for Jews in their historic land, Palestine. During World War I, Britain and its allies were fiercely battling Germany and the Ottoman Empire. At that time, Palestine was under Ottoman rule. But when the war ended and the Ottoman Empire collapsed, a major shift occurred. Britain took control of Palestine in 1920 under the League of Nations. This era became known as the British Mandate of Palestine. Around the same time, in 1917, British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour made a historic declaration promising to establish a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. Behind this declaration lay a strategic motive to win the favor of influential Jewish communities in America and Russia, hoping their support would sway the war and international politics in Britain's favor. Meanwhile, across Europe, Jews were facing growing waves of discrimination, violence, and persecution. In this painful context, a political movement called Zionism began to rise. Its goal was clear: to create a Jewish state, or at the very least, a safe homeland in their historic land of Palestine. Fueled by this vision and fleeing European oppression, waves of Jewish immigrants began arriving in Palestine. Then, under Hitler's brutal regime during World War II, the Holocaust claimed the lives of approximately 6 million Jews. After the war, many of the survivors, broken and homeless, sought refuge in Palestine. Between 1945 and 1948, Jewish immigration surged dramatically, putting immense pressure on the British administration, so much so that they handed the issue over to the newly formed United Nations. In 1947, the UN proposed a dramatic solution, a partition plan to divide Palestine into two separate states, one Jewish, one Arab. Jewish leaders accepted the proposal, but the Arab world strongly rejected it, because the areas where Muslims lived were forcibly included within Israel. Then, on May 14, 1948, a turning point in modern history. As Britain officially ended its mandate, Jewish leaders declared the creation of the new state of Israel. The very next day, neighboring Arab nations declared war, and thus began the First Arab-Israeli War, a conflict that would ignite decades of unrest and reshape the Middle East forever. In this 1948 Arab-Israeli War, Israel emerged victorious and seized more territory than what had been allocated by the United Nations. As a result, around 700,000 Palestinians were forcefully displaced and compelled to seek shelter in refugee camps. This tragic mass displacement is known as the Nakba, meaning catastrophe. Later, in the 1956 Suez Crisis, Israel, alongside Britain and France, launched a military campaign against Egypt. In the intense 1967 Six-Day War, Israel fought against Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, capturing Gaza, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights. This devastating outcome dealt a severe blow to hopes of establishing an independent Palestinian state. Amid these circumstances, the Palestine Liberation Organization (PLO) was established in 1964, with the goal of reclaiming the territories occupied by Israel and founding an independent Palestinian state. Following the 1973 Arab-Israeli War, the PLO gradually shifted from armed struggle to pursuing diplomatic recognition. In 1974, the United Nations General Assembly formally recognized the PLO as the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people and granted it observer status. Under Yasser Arafat's leadership, the organization emerged as a key player in international diplomacy. In 1987, the first Palestinian uprising erupted against Israeli occupation in Gaza and the West Bank. During this turbulent time, Hamas emerged in Gaza, an organization determined to continue armed resistance, refusing to recognize Israel. In 1993, a glimmer of hope appeared when Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization signed the Oslo Agreement. Both sides formally recognized each other, and the Palestinian Authority gained limited self-rule in parts of Gaza and the West Bank. Yet the dream of a fully independent Palestinian state remained distant, still unfulfilled. The political landscape shifted dramatically in 2006 when Hamas won the elections, prompting international aid to be cut off. By the following year, in 2007, Hamas took control of Gaza, while Fatah maintained power in the West Bank. This division split the Palestinian administration, leaving the territory politically fragmented. Israel launched large-scale military operations in 2008, 2012, and 2014. According to the United Nations and human rights organizations, these conflicts claimed the lives of thousands of Palestinians, many of them women and children, and left vast swaths of Gaza's infrastructure in ruins. On October 7, 2023, Hamas carried out a shocking and unprecedented attack in Israel. Israeli government sources reported nearly 1,200 people killed and around 250 taken hostage. In retaliation, Israel unleashed devastating air and ground assaults on Gaza, plunging the region into an urgent and severe humanitarian crisis. On January 19, 2025, the three-phase proposal for a durable peace officially came into effect. This plan aimed to facilitate prisoner exchanges, enforce a ceasefire, allow partial withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza, and initiate reconstruction efforts. On the very first day, 3 Israeli hostages were released, while Israel freed 90 Palestinians. The beginning of February brought a brief period of relative calm, the ceasefire held, and humanitarian aid began to reach Gaza. Yet, by the end of the month, Hamas returned the bodies of 4 Israeli hostages, and in exchange, Israel released 620 Palestinians. Then, on March 18th, the ceasefire collapsed. Israel launched Operation Might and Sword. On the first day alone, nearly 400 people lost their lives. By the conclusion of the operation, more than 855 lives had been claimed. In early April, the conflict took a dramatic turn. On April 2, Israel approved the seizure of additional land in Gaza. Protests quickly erupted across Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. On May 7, the United Nations issued a warning. Israel's actions could push Gaza's population toward annihilation. On May 18, Israel announced plans to occupy Gaza and resettle civilians, a move that led to the total breakdown of healthcare and food systems. By the end of May, the United States proposed a 60-day ceasefire, but Hamas rejected the offer outright. On August 7, Israel's Security Cabinet approved plans for a military takeover of Gaza City. At the same time, reports of malnutrition and starvation-related deaths among children began to surface. On August 11, Israel announced it would intensify attacks on roads outside Gaza City. French President Emmanuel Macron called for an international peace mission, while Australia pledged to formally recognize the state of Palestine in September. Meanwhile, journalist casualties surged. By this time, approximately 230 journalists had been killed, including Al Jazeera's Anas al-Sharif. In August 2025, Hamas agreed to a new mediation proposal. This plan included a 60-day ceasefire, prisoner exchanges, and limited troop withdrawals. Prime Minister Netanyahu made it clear, the conflict will only end when Hamas is dismantled and all hostages are freed. Meanwhile, Gaza's humanitarian situation remains catastrophic. To date, nearly 62,000 people have lost their lives. Countless others have died from starvation. The United Nations warns that this crisis has evolved into a man-made famine. Within Israel, massive protests continue, while international pressure mounts. France, the European Union, and the United Nations have all issued strong condemnation of Israel's actions. Day by day, people's anger and frustration toward Israel are growing stronger, and people across the globe are standing in solidarity with Palestine.
Viva, viva Palestina! Viva, viva Palestina! Viva, viva Palestina!